Okay everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're back on GT Sport and we're back with the track guides for today's FIA race. I apologise for these getting out a little bit too late for some regions. It will be out in time for obviously the EU and the America regions. And I've managed to get both track guides done, along with obviously the Nürburgring track guide can also be used for the daily race B. That is on all week, all the way through till Monday. So that'll be of benefit all the way through till Sunday night, and I'm sure some people will find it handy. Obviously the track limits are slightly different for the FIA race to the daily race B. So I've done the guide for the FIA race, the stricter version. It is probably about two tenths of a difference, I think, in terms of lap time, 2-3 tenths of a difference in terms of how much you can push the last chicane. That's pretty much the only place where you're going to gain any sort of massive amount of time. There is possibly a slight bit of a gain through the fast chicane I've just gone through there also, which I'll point out in the video. For daily race B you can just run over the line a little bit more than you can for the FIA settings. I've done this track guide in the Mercedes AMG. Now I was going to do this anyway for this track because I want to try and stay in the Mercedes as much as possible. Unfortunately for myself also, is the Mercedes AMG is actually a nice car. It handles well. It's got okay speed, obviously for straight line. It's not the fastest car, but it's quite stable as well, although it can get a little bit tricky with the tyre wear on. But I've done my first race practice last night and it actually handled okay. I was quite surprised how easy it was to drive. I think I can go a lot faster than what I did in my first practice, but for first practice it wasn't bad. Anyway, let's get onto this track guide and start pointing out some of the braking zones and some of the top tips really to get the most out of this car. So going through the last corner, make sure you get a solid exit, going over the start finish line, then you're going to be looking for your first braking zone, which is in between the 150 and the 100 board on the left hand side. We're going to point that out now as we approach them. So I'll slow it down now, and you can see that shadow there is pretty much where you want to start braking. I use that as kind of a guide. Hard on the brakes, down into second gear, and trail brake all the way into the corner. And you really want to try and start getting the car over to that apex as early as possible, because you want to try and skim that apex really. You see, really early on the turning, just about skim it. A little bit late on the apex, to be fair. I could have took that a little bit tight. You can see the ghost actually pulled away a little bit there, but managed to get on the power reasonably well. And now you've got to attack this left hand corner. So I just keep on the accelerator and chuck it in second gear. Don't go up to third gear. Chuck it in second gear and then just lift off the throttle just to allow the front end to start biting into the corner. Once it starts biting in there, you can start putting some throttle in. You can see the ghost was a little bit ahead at that point, but I managed to get a better angle before putting the power down. And an early upshift into third gear. Be careful at this point, you do not run the left hand tyres over that white line. If you do, you're going to pick up a penalty. You can see pretty much running on the white line there. I was maybe a bit on the track side, so fairly safe there. And then brake nice and early before the end of that green part of AstroTurf, and try and keep it very tight to this apex. It's really important to keep the car as close to this curb as possible without cutting it though. If you take too much off there, you will pick up a penalty, so be careful again. And then attack this corner as much as possible again, but again you need to be cautious you don't pick up a penalty. It's not like it used to be. You can't just run all the way over that curb. You can only make sure 2 tyres go over it really. If you get all 4 over it, you're going to pick up a penalty. And on the exit there, you can't also run too far wide there. You can see pushed it reasonably well, going over the split time there, quite a fast split time. And then the next braking point, I use that tarmac there, the end of the tarmac, as a point of reference. And you want to keep it in as close to this curb as possible, down into third gear, on the power to try and start getting the car turning into this apex. So you want to try and get the rear out so that you can chuck it into the next corner. And then you're going to brake down into second gear. You see brakes are on, and down into second gear to try and hit this apex nice and early. You want to try and keep it tight and on this apex. Don't let it run too far wide, the camber will take you off. And then on the power nice and early, accelerating out of that corner into third gear. Use some of the curb on the left hand side to widen the angle, and then you're into the next braking zone, which I use this little bit of grey tarmac on the left hand side. Just past the start of that, I start braking. And you want to try and keep it very tight to this hairpin. I try and keep it as tight as possible. That's the way I do this corner, down into second gear. Keep it nice and tight. Don't run too far wide. You can see I actually braked a little bit later. Started to get a bit of understeer. A bit too aggressive into the corner. But managed to straighten it up and get on the power fairly early. And got reasonable exit speed. It wasn't the best split I've been through there. I'd been through that point at 2 tenths faster than what I did on this lap, but I didn't spend too long. This was pretty much the first day this track went on that I did this lap. And now you want to widen this line by going over the curb on the right hand side to widen the line into this corner, because the limits for the FIA are very strict through this part. You cannot let your left hand tyres run past that white line. If you do, you're going to pick up a penalty. Now for the daily race B, that is a point where you can actually run a little bit over and it will let you get away with it. And then into the next braking zone, braking just short of the 100, you can see I'm going to start braking pretty much here before that 100 board and down into third gear. And now this is a difference from the daily race B also. You can really attack that green bit of Astro on the daily race B. But for the FIA, if you do too much, you will pick up a penalty, but you can run on it a bit. Then onto the powering out of that corner and getting the car over to the left hand side again to try and widen the angle into this right hand corner. Onto the brakes very briefly, just a little tap of the brakes, and then let it coast in third gear before feeling where the grip is. And once the grip's there, hard on the power, accelerating out the corner and going through this split again. Wasn't it's still about 2/10 off my personal best through that split. I think it was that I'd actually done at some on a previous lap. But then going down into the next corner, you're looking for the 100 board on the right hand side, braking just short of that. Now this is because you would normally brake later. For daily race Bs you can brake later because the track limits are very much looser on this chicane than they are on the FIA. On the FIA, look how strict it is. You can just about get your right hand tyre on that white line. Any more than that and it's a penalty. So your limits are guided by the white lines. And again, left hand tyres this time on that white line. If they're any further over to the right hand side, you're going to get a penalty. If you even clip that the little bollard there, it's a penalty. It's very strict through there for the FIA. On the daily race B, you can attack that much more and probably gain about 2-3 tenths of a second just on that one corner, and that's where most of the time it's gained. Now for this corner, you're using that bit of tarmac on the left hand side on the curb. As a reference, I brake just short of that and try and keep the car nice and tight to this apex on the right hand side. I ran a little bit wide there again, but managed to get on the power reasonably well, powering out the corner and going over the line for a 1:56.1, which is not a bad lap with the stricter track limits. Now I didn't carry on pushing that. That was on the first day I think I did that lap, and didn't push it much more because I was happy with it, and it was just more about going onto the manufacturer series and trying that out. We'll have a little watch of that lap from behind the car and try and point out some of the areas which are slightly missed. This apex, I think you'll see slightly missed. You can actually clip over that curb and it will like tighten the line up, and you can then get on the power a bit earlier. So was fractionally down at this point, but not massively down. Managed to hook that corner up and got reasonably good speed all the way through these corners, and you can see how important it is to keep it very tight, that curb there. You can visually see now, obviously from the chase camera, how the tyres stay very close to that curb, and then just use a little bit of the track extension on the left hand side, not too much, you will pick up a penalty. And then you can see again, nice and close to the apex, and swinging the car over to the left hand side. You can see how when I was mentioning about getting on the power and swinging it over, you can see the car, the way it's moving over to the left hand side to widen the angle into that corner. And then for the hairpin, you can see again, I braked a little bit deep into this corner. You're going to see how the car just carried on a little bit with understeer. Now that's not what I wanted to happen. I maybe lost a bit of time there, possibly half a tenth or something like that, but nothing massive, just a little bit of time loss, and that's probably where I was down on my personal best through that section. Again, that's where you can see now you have to keep it 100% within the limits. If you don't, you can pick up a penalty on the FIA. And then through these corners, just trying to keep it smooth, again on the power to try and kick the car out. And then this, you've just got to be so patient before you put maximum throttle in. But once you feel the grips there, you need to be on it very early to get maximum speed all the way down the straight. A fraction of a delay on that throttle could lead to 2/10 or a tenth loss of time. And then again, you're going to see now the stricter track limits, pretty much perfect. I did this chicane. I don't think I could have done that much better. That was nice. Pretty much hooked up the corner and used as much track limits as I could get away with. And then going into the final corner, accelerate now. Use some of the curb on the left hand side as you accelerate. And like I say, it wasn't a bad lap at 1:56.1. Could have been better, but I'll take that for the first day I did the test on with the Nations race. Now we're going to go on to the manufacturer series, driving the Group 4 SLS at Kyoto Park. Now this is the other way compared to when I drove the Nations race, and I didn't really like the other way either. I'm not a massive fan of this track. It's probably one of my weakest tracks on the game. It's probably in the bottom two to three tracks. But looking out for our first braking zone, I use the 50 board. Is where I'm going to chuck the car in and downshift into fourth gear, and I try and hold it very tight to this apex on the blue bit of tarmac on the left hand side, and just try and let it coast through the corner as much as possible, and just let the car steer itself all the way through the corner. You see, just holding it on that blue on the blue tarmac, and then once you feel the grip on the power nice and early, and accelerate out the corner. Now through this section, it's just all about flat out and just trying to keep the car as smooth as possible. I did make a little bit of an error as we come through to this part of the corner. I took this curb too hard. made the car step out a bit, and then I had to go regressive on there, and I was about 2 miles per hour down on what I should be. You can see the Ghost pulling ahead, so there was another couple attempts left on this lap. Into the next braking zone, you see I used the 50 board on that top 50 board as a braking reference to chuck the car in, down into 5th gear, then into 4th gear, and try and keep it as close to that curb on the left hand side as possible. You'll see the Ghost, I hooked it up much better on the Ghost. You'll see much closer to that curb on the power, and you'll see the Ghost actually start pulling away a bit there. That's because I ran a little bit wide on this lap, but it's the best way to do it is staying close to that curb and then going through the sector split. Now this is where I did it a bit better, braking very early. I got on the brakes so early there, and that's the key to this corner. You've got to brake early, down into 4th gear. I think in race conditions I'll probably do this in 3rd gear just for more consistent approach of not getting a penalty. And you'll see you can just about take that. That is pretty much the limit of the corner. If you get that left hand tyre on the grass, it's a penalty. And again, pretty much the same there. If you get your right hand tyre on that bit of grass, it's a penalty. You've got to be very careful not to pick up a penalty on this corner. This is going to be the corner where a lot of people are going to pick up penalties in the race. You've got to try and be smooth. You can see I actually gained a bit on the Ghost there because I actually hooked that up reasonably well. I took good speed through there. Then into the next braking zone. The writing on the floor is my braking reference. We're going to slow it down and pause it. I pretty much brake just before the end of the letter R on that there, braking just short of it, down into 2nd gear, and you want to just approach 2nd gear just before the apex and keep it very tight to this apex. Again, using that blue bit of tarmac, keep it nice and tight on the apex, and then if you do that well, you can feed the power in very early. You see there, full power, just an early upshift into 3rd gear as I felt the rear starting to go a little bit loose. Early upshift into 3rd, accelerating into 4th, and then into this right hand corner. I just lift off a little bit once in 5th gear, down into 4th gear, and you really want to try and keep it tight to this right hand side so you can chuck it in to this corner. You can still cut a little bit off this corner actually. You see there, as long as your left hand tyre doesn't go on the grass, it'll be valid. And again, as long as your right hand tyre on the exit of this corner doesn't go too far over, you can just skim the grass and still get away with it. You won't pick up a penalty there either. And then going into the next braking zone, using the 50 board as my reference, braking pretty much dead on that, maybe a fraction short of the 50 board, then downshifting into 3rd gear, and then just trying to hold it very tight to this apex. I actually hooked this final corner up, and it's where I gained quite a bit on my Ghost. You'll see, keeping it tight to the apex, on the power as early as possible. You'll see the power starts going in, and I really hooked that out. I got on the power so early, and that gave me really good exit speed. You see the Ghost behind now. That's pretty much, a lot of that time has been gained through hooking up that final corner and then going over to the start finishing line, over the line on a 1 minute 40.5, which is not a bad lap considering I don't really like this track. I have managed to find something out very late last night which has improved my overall race pace for this track. I did a race with Stefanzi and managed to finish within about 3-4 seconds of him, so the pace was a lot better in that one. A lot of more about getting consistency. I've changed something. I've changed some gears for some corners from this video. Like I said, the 3rd gear was definitely more consistent than doing it in 4th gear. I was trying to do it in 4th gear in race conditions, and it's probably going to pick up penalties, I think, doing that. So I'm just going to go for the consistent approach with this race because I don't feel I've got the pace. This isn't a track like Nürburgring, for example, where I know I'm one of the faster drivers at that track. This is one of my weaker tracks, and I still wanted to get the guide out because I'm sure it can still help you out. The guide that I've done here, you know, some people will probably struggle a little bit more than myself, but I would say it is one of my weaker tracks. So I'm just going to try and pick up a solid. I was tempted not to even do this race, to be fair. I was so tempted just to leave this and start practice for the Interlagos, but I'm going to do it. And just, you never know, you could get some luck and pick up some good points, so I'm just going to do it and see what happens. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to be back with more GT Sport videos very soon. Hopefully, obviously, we'll have the Nürburgring Group 3 Nations race and this race from the manufacturers uploaded tomorrow and Thursday, and then there might be a bit of a gap again. Sorry about the delay in videos and some of this. A lot of it is because I'm trying to get practice in for some of these races, because the final race is really important for me to get to the World Finals. I really want to do it. I'm going to probably not do the Nations race on Saturday because it's LMP1 at Le Mans. I don't want to be trying to practice too much of that with the strict penalties. I'm just going to concentrate 100% on Interlagos and try and get myself to these World Finals. So let's all hope I can do it. Let's hope I get a solid result tonight, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Thanks again for watching this video. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section if you enjoyed the video. Also, make sure you give it a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video. I do appreciate everyone that gives these videos a thumbs up, and I'll be back very soon. Thanks again for watching, everyone.